Up next, we have the Quantum Fireside Chat. We have Jordan Earls, who is a self-taught programmer since the age of 13. Before Quantum, Jordan viewed over 100 cryptocurrencies. I call him the human AML. He's the co-founder and lead developer of Quantum. And with Jordan is Paul Brigner, who is the managing director of Blockchain Technology and Ecosystem Design Research Center at Georgetown. The two institutions or organizations here at Georgetown, the first focuses on security and software engineering, and the second focuses on blockchain. He's also an alumni of Georgetown with an MBA and a JD, so he's really a true blue Hoya, so Hoya Saxa. And he started his earlier career in software development. Please give them a round of applause as they come in.
Well, thank you for that introduction, and welcome to Georgetown, everyone. So glad this conference is being held here. It's just been truly outstanding. And I have to say, it's been something I've been looking forward to, is sitting down with you here, Jordan, and talking about quantum, smart contracts, and governance in the blockchain. You know, I didn't actually know a lot about quantum when I heard that I was going to be talking to you. So the first thing I did is I looked it up and realized that quantum is the platform that's running SpaceChain. And so whenever you think about putting something in a really tough, harsh environment, putting quantum there to represent blockchain in the space was very impressive. Also, in the last panel, we had Jeff Garzik, who's the CEO of Block, one of the earliest blockchain developers, the Bitcoin developers, and he selected, your platform. So that's impressive. So I'd love to hear more about it. Please tell us about it, please.
Yeah. So, I mean, the whole idea of SpaceChain is basically building a satellite constellation so that they have decentralized internet, and it's all kind of powered by the blockchain, as far as how you actually pay for access to the internet and how the nodes are deployed and everything. And so they built on quantum, and now, right now, there's actually a quantum node up in low Earth orbit that has the entire quantum blockchain on it, and you can actually talk to that node and get block information and everything. So it's really cool that we made it outside of Earth even.
That is amazing. So what was it about quantum that made that an appropriate platform? Why was it selected?
So one of our big things is that from the very beginning we've been focused on smart contracts and basically bringing it to mobile and IoT devices. So beyond just your laptop being able to use smart contracts, but to these lightweight devices that normally can't really interact with that whole ecosystem just because of how restricted that environment is, and also just the kind of some of the more extensibility points of quantum as well.
So you were, as I understand it, you built on the existing platforms. You took the best of all existing platforms and adopted it into quantum. So what were the parts that you kept, and what are you changing?
So to give a brief little description of what all the pieces are that went into quantum, basically we have the Bitcoin style blockchain, so referred to as the UTXO model, but basically what that means is we're compatible with the Bitcoin transaction format and all of the Bitcoin improvement proposals and everything like that, and also the Bitcoin protocols that have been built on top of that. So we're compatible with all that, and then we added in proof of stake. So we actually have proof of stake working today, and it's been working for several months, and it's like a true proof of stake. It's not like master nodes and all that. And then the other big piece is that we have the Ethereum virtual machine basically built on top of this blockchain. And so we basically have decoupled the entire smart contract platform from the underlying blockchain. And that allows us to adapt to more virtual machines in the future and enable potentially like specific business use cases that are exactly tuned for that exact blockchain. And then one other aspect that we added is this notion of a decentralized governance protocol. And basically what that is it allows you to, for you to have a governing party over this blockchain, and to basically for the governing parties to vote and propose changes to the blockchain, and for these changes to be activated and just work without you having to disrupt the ecosystem with, like a fork or anything like that, or having to download new software. Like today, you can actually increase the block size in Quantum from 2 megabytes to 4 megabytes just by the governing parties coming together and voting on it. And the users of the Quantum blockchain, like, they wouldn't be disrupted. They wouldn't have to download new software or anything. So it's a pretty important concept, I think.
Yeah, I think you you mentioned a lot of important concepts there. Maybe we can unpack that a little bit. So in particular, focusing on the smart contract ecosystem, it sounds to me like you're expanding that. And how is that exactly happening? What are you building in to expand the smart contract ecosystem?
So for smart contracts, our big thing for the future is that we're coming out with a new virtual machine that is based on the CPU architecture that your laptop uses, like your MacBook or whatever. And basically what that allows is for you to use stable and proven tooling and programming languages like C++, Rust, Python, things actually people have actually heard about. And beyond that, it allows for you to hire from a much greater hiring pool of experienced people that have been in the space for decades, but they don't know Solidity. They don't really want to learn like a whole new process and new workflow. So it's bringing these old school stable processes that have been in place for decades to smart contracts. And our whole goal with this is basically bringing stability into the smart contract space, rather than just giving smart contract developers more tools to shoot themselves in the foot with and to lose money with. Another thing we're wanting to bring to kind of expand the whole smart contract ecosystem is this notion of a built-in opt-in governance system, so that whenever you're designing a decentralized application, you need to plan for the future. Like, what if you need to upgrade that contract in some way to account for some future condition that you can't predict right now? You need to have some kind of governance built into your system so that that can be done without having to, have some great disruption to all your customers. And we're going to be bringing that as part of the whole new virtual machine to where it's easy to use.
I see. So it seems like there's a lot of implications with that. Taking on that x86 virtual machine certainly makes the whole technology much more approachable for a broader audience. Are there other implications? Is security an implication there too?
Yeah, so our big thing is basically making it to where it's harder to write insecure contracts. And so one of the great aspects of this is basically just being able to use modern tooling, like in C++. You can write your contract there and then actually use like formal verification tools on your code to basically prove that it does what you think it does. And I think that that's very important. And also, we're going to be having like a few other different security aspects that are, harder to get wrong basically on this new virtual machine.
Outstanding. So Ethereum is taking this type of approach too. Is there a difference in what you're doing?
So Ethereum is coming out with a thing called WASM or WebAssembly. And basically that is a virtual machine kind of similar that is targeted for browsers right now. And so you can actually write like, C++ code and then compile it and run it on your browser, which before was not really possible, or not really practical at least. So they're kind of going with that and taking that browser technology and importing it into the blockchain. My own thoughts are that it's still very immature. It's still not actually, like, the design isn't considered complete, and all of the tooling around that whole ecosystem is still like alpha status, so it's not really considered stable. And then beyond that, even for the future, The entire board of members that are designing this WebAssembly protocol are all browser manufacturers. There's no smart contract representation there. So if they later implement something that completely breaks smart contracts, then Ethereum, or us even, if we decide to go with that technology, will basically have to then fork that whole ecosystem and maintain our own version that is for smart contracts, and we kind of lose that huge compatibility story that is so useful about that approach.
So let's dig into the blockchain governance a little bit more. Maybe you can tell us a little bit about, some people here I'm sure already know, but we have some blockchain governance mechanisms. You're building it into the blockchain. What does that mean for the future of blockchain and where blockchain is going to go?
So the blockchain governance, I think, is definitely the way forward, but the way it's been done kind of before now has been really clunky. So traditionally it's been basically a direct democracy. Like everyone has tokens, and one token equals one vote. And there's actually like a graph that shows for the Ethereum DAO vote, like whenever they were voting and deciding if they should fork or not. There's like a chunk that said no, and then one single voter that said yes was bigger than that entire chunk that said no. And so I think that we need to basically move on beyond these direct democracy style governance systems and actually have some structure to kind of counterbalance that, because, you know, there's the whole tragedy of commons effect where people kind of vote for things not knowing that it's actually going to hurt them. And also for going forward, I think that blockchain governance needs to expand beyond just the entire blockchain to encompass also your local decentralized application. And even to have, like, in the future there could be side chains or anything like that. Like, you need almost a tiered governance system like we see in real life, where you have the local governance that controls your local rules and parameters and everything, and then you have, like, this side chain governance or whatever, and then you have the overall blockchain governance that everyone has to abide by, but is less far-reaching.
So in fact, when this governance mechanism is built in, it can prevent or you wouldn't have to necessarily fork when you wanted to make some significant changes. Is that right?
Yeah, I mean, that's the entire idea of just not having to disrupt the ecosystem, because, you know, upgrades are painful enough. We don't need to make them more painful by requiring that people download new software, or, you know, if you're like a merchant or something, that means like downtime for your store. So basically going forward, this on-chain governance compared to traditionally we have usually what's called off-chain governance. So, you know, like designers of Bitcoin or whatever project come together, they decide something, and then they have to basically convince everyone else to accept it. On-chain governance is more of a opt-out system. So you can still like reject a change, but rejecting that change basically requires you to maintain your own copy of that software that has that governance system, like an exception put in basically. And so the big thing forward is that it's very hard to add on a governance system after your project has already been deployed. So it's best to have, you know, something in place before you're popular, basically.
Interesting. You know, as I've heard about your general philosophy in building Quantum, it's really been taking the best and building it in, and then adding even more onto that. It's almost as if we've had Bitcoin as version 1, Ethereum as version 2, and then Quantum is version 3 is kind of the way I look at it. Is that pretty much what you're thinking?
Yeah, I mean, I think that we still have a long way to go, especially since we haven't released this new virtual machine yet. I think right now we're at like 2.5, but with the release of that, we'll be at version 3, and we'll be opening up new aspects of smart contracts that people didn't even really like think were practical to do beforehand.
So you started to talk a little bit about the roadmap. Do you want to just outline the roadmap for us and where you're headed with this?
Yeah, so the x86 virtual machine is planned to basically be released later this year, and we're going to have a prototype in a few months. And for that, that'll enable, of course, writing smart contracts in new languages and things like that, and different security implementations, like we talked about. But and then beyond that, we're also looking at off-chain scaling, and for us, that at least will start with long-lived payment channels, and so that you can basically make payments and everything, and receive payments as a merchant, and basically not have to worry about that that person might not have money on the blockchain because someone else is covering for it, basically. And also in the future, like 2019, we plan on implementing basically an enterprise version of Quantum. And what that'll enable is for enterprises to come in and basically take this framework of the Quantum blockchain, configure it exactly how their enterprise needs, and even write in their own virtual machine code. For instance, like if you have some kind of proprietary accounting software that you need on your blockchain, you can write that code and it can be exactly tuned to your use case, and then you can run smart contracts on top of your own accounting code, basically. And then, of course, the consensus and everything else be configurable, so that basically the idea is that you write a configuration file and you have a blockchain that is not just ready for you to like test out and everything, but also ready for production. And we're planning on having that ready in early 2019.
Outstanding. So clearly you have a public blockchain under Quantum running right now. Are there other applications that we would want to know about aside from Space Chain that we should be watching?
There's quite a few. I mean, we have like over 50 decentralized applications that have at least announced themselves so far, and quite a few that are already deployed and running. So there's like Bodhi is like a prediction market. There's Space Chain, of course, decentralized internet. And then there's others like Ink Chain. They're like kind of like Steam, like blogging, but on the Quantum blockchain. And then Hala Chain, there's there's a lot of them. I can't keep track.
But it seems to me that the real opportunity here might be in the enterprise space with maybe some of these use cases that you kind of mentioned. Is there any other particular ones that you think would be a good fit?
Yeah, I mean, right now we're really focused on public chain, but that's definitely where we're going to be looking for after we get, our first step done. And I think that Quantum will be especially good for like supply chain tracking, where you're basically having to use IoT devices to track objects and things that are moving, and even tracking things like temperature and other sensor data. Quantum is kind of designed for this whole IoT use case, and we're actually in an alliance called the Trusted IoT Alliance. And so with that, that's definitely an ideal use case, but also other use cases that basically stem from using the blockchain on these smaller devices that you don't have like 10 gigs of data to sync the entire blockchain or whatever. So Quantum's definitely designed for those latter use case applications that are like in these IoT and mobile devices.
Excellent. So as you're looking to the future, and we've already covered quite a bit on smart contracts and governance, can you look ahead and give us some thoughts on where we might be in a couple of years?
In a couple of years, I definitely see that blockchain will be making more and more mainstream. I think we'll really know that blockchain has become mainstream whenever people start downloading the application and they use it, and they never even know that blockchain is actually being used behind the scenes of it. And that's one of the things that kind of Quantum is aiming to enable as well, just to be seamless, to where because users, they don't care what the technology is. No one knows what Facebook is written in or Twitter is written in. They care that it works and it does whatever they want it to do. It posts status updates, or it tracks your package that's coming in from Amazon or whatever. It doesn't matter how exactly that works as long as it actually works. And I think blockchain is going to be the big future for basically bringing that, making those processes more efficient than we currently have, and also being able to basically involve multiple parties without having to have complex trust agreements and such. And that's kind of also ties into the whole governance aspect. Blockchain governance, I think, is going to, right now it's still very young. We've only had basically prototypes of it really so far. And I think going forward, that's going to be one of the big focuses that all these companies and such, they're going to be looking to blockchain. You know, they're going to need to know, how do we add more parties to this environment? How do we upgrade our infrastructure? How do we, you know, remove a malicious party that wanted to crash it or whatever? And all those things have to be answered. And I think on-chain governance is probably one of the biggest answers for it.
Excellent. Well, it's been a privilege to talk to you. I am going to keep quantum on my radar. Sounds like it's going to be a very exciting platform and may solve some of our biggest problems. So I'm sure you all are going to be watching it too. Thank you very much, Jordan. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.